Good afternoon and welcome to Destination Wellbeing. My guest this afternoon is Wayne, and Wayne is here to chat to us all about in coming up we have next week we've got anti-bullying week, and Wayne's area of expertise is all things social media, and in particular we're going to be talking today about young people, how they can look after their own online image, but also a little bit we'll touch on some cyberbullying bits and pieces as well. So welcome along to Destination Wellbeing.
Thanks, Joanne, for having me in. It's great to be here.
Yeah, good. And we've a few statistics, I suppose, that we'll start off with, because I think whenever we see some of the facts and the figures and the reality of what's going on, then we've, as parents and as people who are looking after young people, then we have much more idea of what is really happening out there. So,
yeah, sure.
43% of children under the age between 5 and 15 have a social network.
Yeah, I mean, and these are very interesting because these aren't, US figures or, Canadian figures. These are actually UK figures.
Yeah.
So these are very, very interesting and very, very concerning. 43% of kids aged 5 to 15 have a social networking profile. So teenage girls are sending an average of 221 texts per week. And again, these are Ofcom figures, and they bring out an annual report every year. There's just the new ones come out in October. And the one from last year are the statistics which we're showing here today.
Yeah, it's all pretty fresh. And I'm sure in the last 12 months, I mean, with the popularity of tablets and things like that, that has all increased as well.
Yeah.
I certainly don't imagine that any of these figures have went down.
No, you're absolutely right. They're only going to increase all the time. And we've just got Christmas now just around the corner. And a lot of the kids that I'm out talking to are saying that they're getting tablet devices for Christmas. Yeah. So, you've got the figure here from CNET of 7.5 million Facebook users are under 13. But also, 5 million of those are under 10. They're actually under 10. So, the kids are using the technology. The kids are using the platforms. It's just all about understanding what they're using it for, who they're talking to, and what conversations they're having online. Yeah. So that's the kind of things I'm going out and talking to kids about and working with other partners in relation to creating that awareness.
And I suppose as parents, every generation has something that they're not going to be familiar with. There's from our generation, our parents had things that we were doing that they weren't so familiar with, but I suspect that it just didn't have the global impact that social media has had in the last 5-10 years. I mean, even 2-3 years ago, I think if anybody had talked about a tablet, we would have all thought it was something that you take, as opposed to something that you're using, whereas now so many young people have. And parents are, I'm sure, no doubt concerned, but one of the things that can happen sometimes is that when we don't know about something, we kind of go with the ostrich syndrome and we bury our head in the sand. But you're saying that's not the approach the parents should be taking. They really need to be proactive about it.
They do, and that's the big challenge. It's creating awareness, and you're absolutely right. I mean, you've hit a number of points there along that piece of information, and it's all about trying to educate the parents that technology isn't really as bad as they think it is, or it's not as hard to get the grips of as they think it is. But the thing about it is, I mean, my mum didn't grow up with this technology. Our kids are growing up with it now. It's in the classroom. It's 24/7. And the technology, to be fair to it, is very much a part of modern childhood. It's how kids learn. It's how we all learn. It's how we share information. So it has a very, very useful aspect in our society. It's how we're using it is the problem. You'll hear all sorts of madcap ideas coming out from people like Jamie Oliver and saying, ban the technology. I'm not going to let my kids use the technology. But I think that's not helping the situation. I mean, we need to educate first before we look at doing other things.
I think it's like anything. Things in moderation are fine. Too much of a good thing's bad for you.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's probably where children are probably spending, and not all of them. Of course, that's a very sweeping statement. Not all of them, but increasingly more and more children are spending too much time. It's not that it shouldn't be any time. It's just that it shouldn't be all of the time.
Yeah, and it needs to be limited in terms of the time they're spending using their devices. I mean, I got the bus back last week from Belfast, and there was a person sitting across from me, about 16 years of age, who had 3 connected devices. Yeah. I mean, this guy had an iPhone, he had an iPad, and he had a BlackBerry. So our kids are hyper connected. They are always connected to the internet. They can share information at the touch of a button. We do need to start looking at the well-being aspect of it, really, and encourage kids to, yes, use the technology, yes, embrace the technology, but ultimately don't forget that you have a bike outside, that you can go out for a cycle, that you can go and play a game of football, that you can do all these things outside, because these things are also very, very, very important.
Yeah, I suppose one of the things when we talk about social media being, it has probably went that it's nearly less social. And I know we've spoke briefly before about, where children are less and less able to have conversation. It's all about, they're able to text, they're able to tweet, they're able to Facebook, they're able to update statuses, but put them round and ask them to engage with, be it adults or peer group, they find that quite difficult.
They do. I mean, the art of conversation is gone. I mean, young people in particular do find it difficult because it's how they communicate now. They communicate in a digital environment, and it's completely different. And there's all sorts of challenges for education, for businesses, for brands, for how they reach these individuals, how they reach these digital natives, as I call them. It's a completely different ball game. And TV has changed now. The newspapers are struggling. Radio's changing. A lot of it now is moving online. A lot of it's becoming very integrated.
Yeah. Which has its positives as well.
Does,
and I suppose it's important to remember that side. But for parents as well, though, whilst companies can employ marketing experts and they can employ all of those things to help them communicate with their children, with children audiences and the children that they're selling to, it also poses that same challenge for parents in how do we communicate with our children when we're communicating face to face and talking, and they're communicating through technological devices.
Sure, yeah. Parents can learn an awful lot from their kids in terms of how they're using devices. They can also figure out, their kids can take them through, look, here's what I do on Facebook. Here's what I do on Twitter, for example. So there's a massive opportunity for parents to learn. And let's not forget, I mean, we were teenagers one time before. Kids are always going to test boundaries. So it's important that you have boundaries set in place if you're going to be letting your kids use technology. It's very important that you limit the time that they spend on the technology, because we're seeing on one of the stats earlier on, they're spending up to 17 hours a week using devices. It's important that we encourage fitness. It's important that we encourage well-being and get them outside, get them doing stuff which is offline, because that offline activity that they're going to be doing is going to help improve their confidence. It's going to help improve their communication skills. They're not going to be as zoned in on a specific conversation online or using a specific device. So the parents can really, really get involved, and I encourage all parents to get involved and set boundaries. Those are the two things which are really, really important with technology.
And I suppose a lot of it comes down, we look at how young people now, I talked a few weeks ago, I had a lady called Sonia Longridge who has written a book called Raising Happy, Confident Children. And through some of the Relaxed Kids work and stuff that I do, a lot of it's about children's confidence and self-esteem. And we look at some of the so much of the terminology around Facebook and Twitter and Snapchat, and there's probably 100 others that I don't know about, but those are the ones that I would sort of be familiar with, is all to do with, there's nearly a psychological play. There's a like, there's how many friends have you got, how much have you, how much does somebody actually like me based on something I've said, and they're constantly seeing statistics around that. So 300 people liked your status or 20 people liked it, and then that's then used as a bullying thing because oh, you put such and such up and only 5 people liked it, you must be such a loser, and that type of attitude. Is that something that children that you're speaking to? Because I'm sure you get a different feel than what a teacher in a classroom will get and what a parent will get at home. They're maybe a wee bit more open in what's happening in reality.
You know, the thing about it is those sorts of things matter to kids. I mean, that's the society we live in right now. I mean, and unfortunately, we've allowed that to happen. You know, we have allowed that sort of, that to take hold. And kids are caught up in the things like how many people have liked that status, how many people have shared that status. You know, and we talked about the story, and I shared that with you, about a friend of mine whose was his daughter's birthday. And his daughter was extremely upset, not by the amount of cards that she didn't get, but by the amount of people who didn't wish her happy birthday on Facebook. That's the kind of hold that the Facebooks and the Twitters and the Snapchats of this world have on our young kids. We need to start thinking about how we can encourage resilience within our kids, how we can encourage resilience, that if they come across things online or they see things online which might upset them, that's okay. And that doesn't define who you are. You're much more than that.
It's like I saw a quote yesterday, which reminds me just of what you're saying there, is that the bird sitting on a branch isn't afraid of the branch breaking. because he trusts his own wings. Likewise, if a child has the confidence within themselves that it's themselves that gives them the confidence, not external people or comments or whatever else, then they aren't able to let that in to affect them. And I suppose that's a message that's important coming up into Anti-Bullying Week as well, because cyberbullying is no doubt a big area of concern now for parents when their children used to be, maybe when a child, not that it was had any less of an impact on them, but maybe a child was being bullied or picked on in school, or they were the one that, you know, stood out from the rest of the group or whatever, that they could leave it at the door at 3 o'clock or 2:30, whatever time they finished up at school at, and it wasn't a problem until the next day. Now the child might have still thought about it and whatever, but there's now just a constant bombardment.
Yeah, it is, and here's
they can't get away from it.
That's the thing. I mean, yeah, you've set the scene quite well in that one. I mean, that's the thing. It's 24/7. It's 365 days of the year. When I was going to school, thankfully there was no technology. There was no mobiles. There was no smartphones. I think there might have been pagers. That's how long ago it was. But there was none of that. Where when you left the school, if you were experiencing issues within the school or somebody was bullying you, once you went home and you closed your front door, you were safe.
Yeah.
You were safe.
You could breathe.
You could breathe. You were safe till the next day. Yeah. However, now because we live in a super connected society, everyone has a smartphone now. They're connected all the time. The bullying is 24/7. So if they're experiencing issues online, it carries into the home. It carries into the outside activities. It carries into the weekend. It carries into the late hours of the night. Sometimes to the early morning.
Yeah.
It's
they're
always
not
on.
Sleeping
They're not sleeping, and it does take a hold, and it's incredibly dangerous. And it's really, really important that we build resilience within our kids from a very, very early age. That we have the conversations that they're going to come across things online that might upset them. People might say things about them online, that they come and talk to a responsible adult. They come and talk to someone they trust, and they don't let that content define who they are.
Yeah. And allowing them that safety that they feel they can talk about it, and that it's open. And I know even like friends of mine that have children at that sort of 8, 9, 10-year-old age, they do keep, the majority of them do keep checking, put no passwords that, no devices having passwords that parents don't know. Yeah. I think it's a very practical thing.
Absolutely.
No Facebook that parents don't know passwords for, and regularly take a check at what is happening and because I think one thing that I would say certainly with young people is they're not great at deleting stuff. No. They tend to let it sit there. They tend to let it be there. So you'll be able to quite quickly pick it up. Or if there's a piece of a conversation missing, the chances are they've deleted a bit of it because it's something they don't want you to see.
I mean, 59%, there was research out recently that 59% of teens have actually deleted or edited something they posted online. So yeah, I mean, they make the mistakes. They do. There is stuff out there. I suppose the big argument is, should we snoop on our kids? I think you gotta draw from that your own conclusions. I think conversations are really, really important. I think having those conversations from a very early age is important. I have 2 kids. I have a 5-year-old and a 4-year-old, and they're using YouTube. 38% of 2-year-olds have used a tablet device, and this is recent research. It's just out. So kids are being exposed to it from a very, very early age, Joanne. So by the time they've reached secondary school, a lot of the times the horse is bolted. It's a bit too late then to be saying these things are happening and there's bullying taking place. Whereas if we start this conversation a lot earlier, it becomes a lot easier to manage because we've built the resilience from a very, very early age and we haven't left it till 12, 13, 14 to try and do it. So now when I'm going into schools as well to talk to primary school, P1 kids, and it's amazing when I ask a question, who uses what devices? I mean, the little hands go up for Skype, the little hands go up for Instagram. The kids are using the platforms. The kids are using the technology. It's the parents that, a lot of the times that I need to reach and say, look, the technology is great, the technology is wonderful, but you need to be involved in how it's been used.
One of the, I saw you tweeting an interesting comment the other day, which was that such a percentage of children have said that they're not now using Facebook. Yeah. Because my parents have that.
Yeah, I mean that was a great one. The kid said that we don't use Facebook because our parents aren't. Our parents are on it now. Or another kid was saying, another teenager said to me the other day, Snapchat is so much more fun because our parents aren't on it. And that kind of sums it all up for me. But the growing demographic on Facebook, believe it or not, is female, 55 plus. I mean, it's people like my mum, who've got the time now to figure it out and are just moving on to that platform now. The teenagers have moved away from it. Yeah. They're on Instagram, they're on Snapchat, they're on Selfie, they're using all these mobile apps. 200 million of Facebook users, only use the app mobile. They don't use it on the desktop version. So kids are moving all the time.
Yeah, they're moving. It's us having to run to keep up with them.
Absolutely, yeah. And we're trying to grapple to try and figure out what's the next thing coming down the line.
Yeah. And I think even if we take it off just children for a few minutes and we look at, and obviously through a lot of my wellbeing work, I would see people who do have some anxiety problems, do have some depression problems and issues that are going on for them at the minute. And looking at that, it would be very easy to see when they spend too much time on social media, particularly Facebook, and as you said, that age group is growing and it's particularly female, whereby they're only seeing the good of people's lives. The vast majority of people post, and if you're sitting in maybe on a Saturday night feeling not too good about life and living, and suddenly you're looking and all you see is the people that are out enjoying themselves, because the people who are also sitting in with nothing to do aren't telling anybody that they're sitting in with nothing to do. So we can create a very false sense of what's happening in the rest of the world outside ourselves. And I think for me, one of the important messages would be to remember that that is what it is. It's sort of a platform. Whilst you will have people who will put everything out, right from, and we've talked about the person who's telling you what they've had for breakfast, right through every stage that they do from a day. And I suppose that has its security risks as well. But I think there is also the possibility of using it. Like a lot of the pages that I would use would be like educational pages, living better, organic food, things like that. And so we can talk about all the negative sides of it, but if we're engaging with the right type of positive messages that we choose to engage with, then it can have really quite a beneficial impact on our lives as well.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. We live out our life on Facebook. I mean, we live out our life on these social media channels, and you're absolutely right. I mean, we're not going to say that we're sitting in the house on a Saturday night with no money to go out and go to the nightclub with our friends. We're not going to post that sort of information out there because we're going to not want people to see that we, maybe we're in a situation. And yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. We only post the positives. And a lot of people are doing that. They're using it just as a way to show the good parts of their life, and they're not really focusing on it or posting out information about the other things. There's lots of ways we can use it more positively, and that's the thing. I think we need to start thinking about the content that we're creating. Mm-hmm. We need to think that content's going to be around for a very, very long time. We need to start thinking about, yes, the amount of time we're spending on social media, because we are super connected all the time. And it is going to cause problems for our well-being. We talked about this before we came on air. I mean, there was a point in my life where I became extremely addicted to Twitter. And that's the hold as an adult that platform had on me. And what was happening with me was that I was actually getting involved in conversations in other time zones. For example, the East Coast of America. And I'd be in educational conversations. Now, it wasn't that I was, potentially using it sort of frickety.
It wasn't gossip.
It wasn't gossip. No, it was about something which was of interest to me. And the conversations might start at 11 o'clock at night. I would be still in that conversation, Joanne, at 1:30 in the morning when everybody in my house was sleeping. Then I might fall off to sleep, and then I might wake up then at 3:30 and check that Twitter feed again. So you can see very quickly the hold it gets on you.
Yeah.
But I was doing this over an extended period of time, and there was a point that I was actually checking Twitter at least 150 times a day.
And I think that's the thing is, as well, is it's stuff that stays on, and that's the hold that it has as well, is that it stays on for such a short period of time. So there is a consistency needed with it, and there's a constant engagement.
Absolutely, yeah.
In order to get the benefit, the full benefit. And obviously that's what they've done. But I think with anything and we still have to go with the fact that it's relatively new, whilst it has such a major impact on people's lives, we really just don't know the long-term effect.
No, we don't.
We can assume there's going to be one.
We can definitely assume that, because, there's nothing more that I love now than to leave the phone at home and get out for a walk. Just to put the phone down now, because I've been able to control that almost addiction. Yeah. Because I'm not a smoker, but I can see the hold that had on me, and it was all about getting people to retweet stuff. I wanted to see who's going to retweet that, and if somebody picks up that who's got a lot of followers, then I'm going to reach a lot more people. So it's kind of almost like a gambling,
but
a bit like that.
It's all where we need that reassurance, and if we don't need the reassurance, then we need the the ego massage as such. Well, I've come up with something that X number of people want to retweet and want to follow, and that makes us feel good, and therefore we want to do it more the next night or the next day, or
and we're concerned about numbers. We're concerned about the amount of people who are following our pages. We're concerned about the amount of people who follow us on Twitter. Celebrities have a lot to answer for in relation to how they're using the social media and the messages that they're pushing out that young people are seeing. That's the thing. I mean, there's a big opportunity there for celebrities to be more proactive in terms of how they're using it and more responsible.
And I think that with celebrities, that's a whole broad spectrum of their life really. But I know, Wayne, on particularly when we go back to the bullying side of things, you have an e-download, free download on your website around how to beat the cyberbully. And there's tips in there for parents and for young people as well. So, and your website, do you want to share?
The website, the ebook that you just highlighted there, came out last year, November. It needs a little bit of an update now, but I'm bringing that into a printed book. It's got about 1,000 downloads, so it's got great traction all over the world. And again, the social media, to be fair, has been very good at pushing that out there, creating awareness and getting people to download the ebook. But it's got some great information in there for parents. First of all, if your son or daughter is being bullied, how do you notice the signs? What are the signs and what are the symptoms of cyberbullying? There's lots of things that you can look out for. Again, it's not bury your head in the sand and think it's not happening. A lot of the times, and I'm a parent, if your gut instinct is telling you something, it's probably true. So that's a good time to go and have the conversations. But watch out for things like dip in usage of technology. If you see that your son or daughter maybe doesn't want to use social media anymore, or maybe is not using the game system just as much as they used to use the game system, those are very, very good indicators that something has happened, something has taken place online.
And I think one of the things is that prevention is better than cure. And equally as well, I suppose, and it's an area that often gets missed, and through some of the self-esteem and confidence stuff that I would be doing, you often meet not just the person who's been bullied, but the bully. The problems for them are as big. There's if that's a young person at 12 or 13, that person has their whole life ahead of them. And hopefully we'll have you in again for another conversation around that and around what your online image is as well, because that's so important for young people to look at how that's impacting on their future well-being, maybe their future job, their future partner, where they're going, how their lives are going to play out when they're 18, 19, 20 on from that age, because what can seem great fun at 15 and 16, we all know how silly we could have been at 15 and 16, but we weren't being caught on camera constantly, thankfully.
And that's the thing.
And I think that's the danger for some of the young people. So, Wayne, thanks a million for your time.
No worries.
This
Thank you for having me in,
afternoon. And I'm sure, hopefully, as we say, it's waynedenner.com through your website.
waynedenner.com,
And there's lots of great tips in there. So any parents, I know a lot of the schools certainly into next week will be focusing quite a bit on, particularly on cyberbullying, but bullying as a whole. And a lot of that can come down to helping the child, be they the bully or the bullied person, to improve their confidence and their self-esteem. But thanks a million, Wayne, and thank you to all our viewers this afternoon. And we'll see you back on Destination Wellbeing next week.